What George did was an intentional act in that he knew he was pulling the trigger. The reason why he did it was self-defense, and that doesn't suggest a manslaughter charge would be appropriate.
Is that what you do with your proposal?
No. It's going to be much longer.
That was defense attorney Mark O'Mara after the court session today. Back with me, Lisa Bloom, Faith Jenkins, and Marcia Clark, author of the new novel, Killer Ambition. Marcia Clark, the big ruling from the bench starting off the day was that the defense's animation can be used not as an exhibit. It will not be something that goes into the jury room as one of the exhibits with the jurors, but it can be shown to them, used as an illustrative device during the closing argument, for example. So it seems like we are going to see it in closing argument. How do you expect that to work?
Well, they'll use it as a demonstrative exhibit in that it will be the living illustration, the moving illustration of their view of the case, showing, of course, that George Zimmerman was the victim and that Trayvon Martin was the aggressor. And will that work? The question is how powerful this evidence can be. I know that many have said that they think this can be extremely impressive to a jury, but in my experience, you can tip a little too far to the cartoon side. I mean, the fact that this animation does look like Avatar and things that they've seen in Hollywood can make the defense seem like a cartoon version of events. What I think is actually much more compelling is something like John Guy getting on top of that dummy in the courtroom. That brings it home, I think, better to me than something like this, which feels not very real.
Lisa, the defense has been planning to use this animation. They were eager to get it in through testimony, introduced as an exhibit, but now it's just going to be this tool for final argument?
Yeah, I don't think it's all that significant, and I think we have to give this jury some credit for intelligence. They realized this was put together with defense money via a defense expert to prove the defense case, which they've already heard many, many times. They're going to decide this case based on the evidence, not based on a cartoon.
Faith, preview for me the prosecution argument, closing argument.
To these mothers on this jury?
Yeah, to them.
Yeah, George Zimmerman is a mother's worst nightmare, because you send your teenager to the store and you expect that they come home and they're going to be okay. And Trayvon Martin was walking home with nothing but Skittles and iced tea and had a 12-year-old waiting for him at the place where he was staying, and he ends up dead. For these mothers, that's going to be very significant to him, because he was not a suspect. He was not doing anything wrong. He was minding his own business, and he's dead because that man, George Zimmerman, thought he was suspicious.
And Marcia, what can the prosecution say in court about George Zimmerman not testifying?
Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
They're barred from making any reference to it, right?
Any comment at all. Any comment. He has a right to remain silent, and any comment on that right is absolutely, that would be grounds for a mistrial right there. So they can't say anything about it.
And Lisa, given that box that lawyers are always in, they're always in the situation where the defendant doesn't take the stand, they're always trying to find a way to still exploit that and still try to say that without saying that.
That's okay. We've got him on video, and if I'm prosecuting this case, I'm using that video against him, especially at the very end. I'm going to talk about ill will and hatred and spite, because that's second-degree murder. And let's go for second-degree murder. My goodness, we've got him on tape looking at a stranger, a minor, walking down the street and calling him, I cleaned up for your show, an a-hole and an effing punk. If that's not ill will, what is ill will? Do we think he got fonder of Trayvon Martin while they were fighting? And how about 5 months later when he sits down with Hannity, and that's the video I would put up for the jury, where he says it was God's plan.
You know what? Let's put it up right now, because they probably will be using this in the final argument.
He has no remorse. No remorse.
Right. A lot of this case legally has to do with stand your ground. You've heard a lot about it. And I was just curious, prior to this night, this incident, had you even heard stand your ground, sir? You'd never heard about it before. Wow.
Well, Marcia, that's the part of the video where we actually listen. I mean, that's him not telling the truth.
Exactly.
That is what George Zimmerman looks like not telling the truth. Now, the jury's going to have to decide how big an untruth that is, but that's what it is.
It's very telling, you know, among all the other things that he has said. I mean, this is a tough case for the prosecution to put together in that it requires a lot of pieces to refer to, and a lot of these pieces are inconsistent statements that Zimmerman has made, that among them. But then, you know, to me, I think they have to focus on the defining moments of what happened that night. And I'm with Lisa. I think the fact that he's clearly targeting Trayvon Martin from jump. He sees this kid walking. He jumps to a conclusion. The fact that they put in those prior calls to 911 to show his mounting frustration with the police and the fact that these punks always get away with it. And that's a mindset that shows you that he is up to no good himself. But then he's framing up Trayvon without any basis at all. The kid's walking down the block, and he says he's up to no good. What? And, you know, it's very helpful, I have to say, that the cop, Serino, said, from what you've described him doing, I would not stop him. I would not have questioned him. Yeah. So.
Right.
Faith, go ahead.
Well, and in that video, when he talks about God's will, it's like he's not only neighborhood watch now, but he's God's instrument too. Mm-hmm. There's that mindset that he's using throughout, even when he gives his police statement, still calling Trayvon a suspect. I think if you interviewed him today, he'd probably say the same thing, because that's what he thought about this young man.
And let's talk about race. Race is an issue in this case. The 5 people that he called about who were suspicious in the neighborhood before Trayvon Martin, 5 out of 5 were African American. Trayvon Martin was clearly called those names and targeted because he's African American. I mean, is there really any doubt in anyone's mind about that? I think the prosecution has to address that squarely, because there was a witness today who talked about a burglary in the neighborhood, and it was a young African American male. This was a defense witness. What is the point of that? That therefore, anytime someone's walking while black in the neighborhood, we should call the cops?
Well, I think the prosecution has to hit a legitimate reason. The witness came in because they're arguing George Zimmerman had a legitimate reason for finding Trayvon Martin suspicious because other young black men had targeted the neighborhood.
Because there's another black burglar somewhere in the world.
But I will say this, these jurors, they're smart people. When the prosecutors say profiling Trayvon, they're going to know that Zimmerman isn't profiling him because he doesn't like the kind of candy he was carrying. They're going to know it's because it's how he looked and how he was dressed.
Well, it's closing arguments now. Now you should be able to say racial profiling.
Go ahead, Marsha.
Yeah, beyond that, okay, let's give him that. Let's say, okay, you've had so many burglaries by African-American men, and you see another one walking down the street, and so you get suspicious. Okay, then you call the cops. Fine. But what you do after that, that's the problem here. Mm-hmm. If the guy had not gotten out of his car, if the guy had not approached Trayvon Martin, we wouldn't be sitting here today. And that's really the bottom line that I think the prosecution has to hammer home at every opportunity.
I don't think I would give him that. There's one burglary by an African-American that's in evidence.
No,
you don't get
Lisa,
to call the cops every time.
I'm not saying he's right. I'm saying that even if you give him it, give him what he claims to be his justification. Even if you give him that, and I'm not saying you should, but at the very least, what is he doing getting out of his car? Even if he was justified in feeling the way he did.
He went far beyond what neighborhood watch people are supposed to do. That's the point.
We've got to wrap it there for tonight. Lisa Bloom, Faith Jenkins, and Marsha Clark, thank you all very much for joining me tonight.
Thank you.
Coming up, Glenn Greenwald's latest report on Edward Snowden, including the country Greenwald thinks Ed Snowden is headed for. And next, the woman who got dragged out of a Senate hearing, really did, in the Texas Capitol. Sarah Slayman will be allowed to finish here what she wanted to say there. That's going to be in a Last Word exclusive coming up.